From working age 12 in her mom's busy salon to being promoted age 14 to receptionist, all the way to collapsing on the floor with an anxiety attack at work. Let's find out what Rachel has to say about owning your mood. Hello and welcome to the Practical Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Paul Morton, and we are talking about leadership, management, and the various lives that surround it. It's my joy, delight, and privilege to bring into my studio some of the smartest, wisest people I've been able to find for your delectation and enjoyment. And I hope that you do get a lot out of the conversations that we have here. When you realize that your management team has grown too fast, or you've inherited a new team, and the fastest, best lever you have for growth and improvement is attached firmly to those managers, get in touch. I help you run management, coaching, and training programs that'll make a big difference really quickly. You can find me at the Practical Leadership Academy website and on all the usual social channels. Rachel Edmondson-Clarke, thank you very much indeed for joining. Would you mind introducing yourself? In fact, no, I'm going to introduce you for 2 seconds and say the one thing that you impressed me with when we were chatting was that, like me, you've been working since you were an amoeba. So from aged 12 in your mum's salon, okay, to where you are today. If you could summarise that in 30 seconds or less, that'd be great. No, take your time. Tell us about you, Rachel.
Oh, Paul, thank you so much for having me on the show. I am delighted to be here. And no, it's a pleasure. It really is. So yes, I started working at age 12. So my mum ran her own very busy hair and beauty salon. We'd have around 300 clients through the door every week. And by the age of 14, I was fed up of sweeping the floors and, making the teas and coffees. And so I'd convinced her to train me on reception. And I think the thing we were chatting about just before we started recording the podcast was just how you reflect back on that journey of becoming a people manager. And actually my reflection is that, my goodness, actually I started at a really, really, really young age, because whilst the team in the salon of hairdressers weren't directly reporting to me, I was absolutely orchestrating what was happening and needing to influence and direct what was going on. And I was managing the public and the clients as well. That was really, really interesting.
So does that count as non-hierarchical influencing in an environment where you don't have the delegated authority?
I think so.
I think it does.
I think so. Although of course there was always that dynamic that my mum was the boss, but no, it was always fascinating. And I think it's where my deep interest with people began, because I would have a number of seconds where I would look up from that reception desk and I would see clients coming through the door, and I had to very quickly judge what kind of a mood they were in so that I could respond appropriately from behind the reception desk. And sometimes I might have been on the phone. I had 2 telephone lines that came into the salon at that time, might have had a row of people wanting to book appointments or pay or do different things. And so kind of really being able to read people very quickly, I think, was something that I learned in that salon. And it was very, very good grounding, good foundation work, I think.
I think being able to set your emotional volume control at the right level for someone is a great learned skill. You know, in your case, is somebody chatty and wants a blather, or is somebody on a mission?
Yes.
Where is it on the scale of spectrum of intensity or humorosity or whatever it is? It's a fascinating thing to learn. Dealing with the general public is a great skill. I think if I can possibly wangle it, I want to kick my kids out as early as possible into the world of waiting tables.
Yes.
Doing something in front of people. So
Yes.
you'll learn that the world is not their little bubble. Because their little bubble is us and the pals and people who are very much like us.
Yeah.
And the world is made up of people who are very much not like us.
Absolutely. And it's that age-old, isn't it? People like people who are like themselves. So as you say, when we can assess quickly where people are at, and then we can adjust our own barometers so that we are meeting them much more where they're at, we're much more likely to be in a position to more positively influence them. And it is absolutely a skill skill that can be learned.
The positive influence, that's a lovely phrase, to positively influence someone. I think the good managers that I've promoted or worked with, or I currently work with as a coach, they're the ones who have a passion for people and who burn for seeing other people grow. It's the failures are the ones who are fabulous at the job and then were promoted into the functional head of something, but they don't like people. They're really good at the thing, but they don't like the people.
No, and don't you see that? You see that so much, don't you? Where just because somebody's very good at that technical area of expertise, the very next step on the ladder or the natural progression then seems to be to lead a team. And yet actually being a leader has a whole nother skill set associated with it. And I really feel for people who are potentially maybe moving into one of their first line management type of role, particularly if they're not getting the support to do that, because it can be a very different set of skills that are required in that role. And often I think that's something that gets missed.
I think one of your first roles was one where you took over working as the boss of the folk you used to work with.
Oh, I did. Yes, it was. Yes. So my first leadership role, I led a team that I was part of. So that was quite interesting. So I was the field sales manager for the whole of the UK and Northern Ireland for Uncle Ben's and Delmio. And I was in my, sort of mid-20s, probably, still quite young. And I think anyone that experiences that, where you've been part of the team and then you step up to then lead the team, it presents a number of challenges, that can come with that. I think, you're wanting to build credibility and gain trust as a leader because you're now fulfilling a very different role for that team. And navigating the relationships at that time can also be kind of tricky. I was really lucky with that team because they were very, very supportive of me, but I was also aware as I went into the role that there might have been some competitiveness potentially. There wasn't, it was great, but there might have been. And also that some people might have had some reservations about my ability to lead. So, and I think anytime you're stepping up into that type of a role, there's just added pressure and expectations as well that come along with that.
Mm-hmm. Where did you go from there?
Oh, so from sales, I went to marketing. I became brand manager of Whisker's cat food. And from there, I went into a head of product strategy role for Thorntons. Really enjoyed that. Interestingly, the same thing happened to me in the Thorntons while I was working at Thorntons. So I again became the leader of a team that I was part of. So that was again another interesting dynamic, but something I'd faced before. So I felt as though I had some experience in doing that. And yes. And then it was, I don't know, 7 or so years into my role at Thorntons where I realized that I had a whisper on my heart that I guess I'd got to this point in my career where I felt like I'd achieved and got to a place that I thought I'd always been striving for. At university, I did a master's in marketing and management. And, this was always kind of like where I was headed and what I wanted. And I guess I got there and kind of looked around and was like, hang on a minute, this isn't quite as fulfilling as I perhaps thought it would be. There were elements and aspects of it that were. And I had this whisper on my heart that there was something more. And I didn't know what that was. But I remember the day that I really listened to that whisper for the very first time. It was one of those shower moments. I don't know what it is about running water, but sometimes it helps us think more clearly. But I was literally getting ready for work one day, and I remembered sort of almost turning to that whisper and saying, "What are you trying to say to me?" And as I came out the shower and my feet hit the bath mat, I'd made a decision, and that decision was that I was no longer looking for a job or a career, but I was looking for my life's mission. And I had no idea at that time what it was going to be or what that meant, but that's what I wanted. And I'm enormously grateful because that is, 10, 13 years ago now. And I get to do what I love every single day.
I think it sounds like a move from seeking success to seeking significance.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a beautiful way of summarizing it. We spend so much of our time at work that I think to do something that we really enjoy and that we're passionate about, it's so fulfilling. And I love my work and I love what I do. So yeah, and I would encourage anybody that's got that whisper on their heart to take note of it. And I didn't find the answer straight away. It took maybe 3 years for me to work out what it was that I wanted to do. And it wasn't a straight line path. I'd often describe it almost like they're stepping stones across a misty lake. And sometimes all you can see is the very first stepping stone in front of you. But as you have the courage to take those first steps and to explore with excitement and possibility, that mist starts to clear and you see the next step. And then you see a bit more of the path ahead. And it's been a beautiful unfolding and one that I think will be ever evolving. And, as I'm sure, life is anyway. And yeah, I would just encourage people to explore that and not to ignore that whisper on their heart.
There's the idea of be yourself, everyone else is taken, which is good. Trying to find some sort of authenticity around yourself, which is fine unless you're an ass, in which case don't be you, be somebody else. And the following your passion piece. Following your passion's all very well and good, but what if you're rubbish at it? What if nobody wants what you've got? And you probably come across the idea of ikigai. This is Japanese, that bit right in the middle where you've got the thing you love,
yes,
and the thing you're good at,
absolutely,
and the thing that's valued by society,
yes,
and the thing that makes you some bloody money.
Yes.
Right in the middle is the ikigai, which is your life's mission, as you said, your mission, the significance.
My soul's contract, I call it.
Your soul's contract. You're a poet and you don't know it. That's magic. I love it. Your soul's contract. My goodness me. Do you then have a quote or a mantra that you live by or you think of?
I do. It's to be ever evolving, true to my spirit, to enjoy the journey of life and, to be open and receptive to the miracles that can come for myself and for others.
You tell me that's like tattooed somewhere, right? No, I don't show that. No,
I need to get it tattooed, don't I? I do. But no, I think, being ever evolving, growth is a huge part of who I am and how I live. I believe that if we're not growing, we're dying or we're dead. There's no plateaus in life. We don't stand still for very long. You've only got to look out in nature to see that. And so I'm often looking for what's the where is the growth, what is the next thing, and that does life inevitably throws challenges and problems our way, which causes us to grow anyway. But for me, that's about how do we become more? Because as we become more, we can give more. And as we give more to others, that is, I think, the true secret to life and fulfillment, where we can give more and contribute more. That's where you've got this beautiful sweet spot of fulfillment and success. And I think for us to be able to seek professional success and personal fulfillment is something that we can absolutely strive for and to do. And it's not a perfection thing. It's and I'm still challenged every day. We were talking, we've both got young families, and I'm constantly working on this, but moment to moment showing up and being my best self here for you in this podcast, for my little 4-year-old boy who's, has just gone out with my mum on a bike ride. And, it's that moment to moment. How do we show up and be our best selves and really enjoy that journey along the way?
Mm-hmm. I think a big part of that is actually giving ourselves a break for the most of the time when we do it.
Absolutely. Be talking kindly to ourselves. Yes. Being impeccable with our words. For sure. Absolutely.
There's a book in you there if you haven't written one already.
No, I know, and I have no interest in writing a book. People say this to me a lot. I was like, that's just the last thing I want to do. Maybe one day, and I would
speak it to somebody. I was sitting on a plane once, and I ended up gabbing away to this guy who was like a 10 hours somewhere. And I ended up chatting to this woman actually, and she said, She found out I'd studied in Edinburgh and was a Scotsman. She said, "Oh, I think there's a one-man show at the festival in you." And I said, "You might be right. You might be right." Because yes, I'm a Gabby sod rather than the other side. Let's go back to carry on from you were working for 8 out of 10 Cat, and then you moved on to the chocolatiers of choice.
That's right. Yes.
What happened?
What happened? I think I often think that life shows up for us if I was ignoring that whisper on my heart, and I'd been ignoring it for a really long time, if I'm very honest. And I think what ultimately happened was, this is not the poet in me, but I think life came along and it was like it slapped me around the face with a great big wet fish. It was just like, come on, girl, you ain't picking up the call. You ain't doing what you're doing. And so it threw me the curveball, and the curveball came just one day I was in my glass-fronted office. I was preparing to go into the boardroom, and instead of walking out the door, I found myself on the floor staring up at the ceiling tiles. I was unable to breathe. I couldn't think, and I'd collapsed there. And what I didn't know at the time, but I understand now, is that I'd had an anxiety attack, and I was able to, recover from that. But I had allowed, there were habits and there were things that I had disrespected for a long time that had led to that. I disrespected, my health. I'd neglected the most important relationship in my life, and and it led to a pretty dark moment, which was also a decision point. And I think we have these decision points every single day in our lives, but sometimes we have some real significant ones as well. And it led to this decision point that was, okay, not this, no more. This needs to change. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it did. I actually managed to get into the boardroom. I did do it. To get me through that moment, I leaned on the support of somebody who I will be forever grateful for, someone who I could trust, who was able to come in and help me when I couldn't think of just even the simplest of things. And they helped me prepare, and they helped me get in the room, and I got through what I needed to get through that day. But then it was taking the courage to say to my then director, something needs to change, something needs to be different. And we looked at restructuring the team, actually. And instead of me leading the team, I went back into it, and we got a consultant that came in and that did the role that I had been doing. And so that was also a really interesting dynamic, and lots of things going on there. I realized that there had been a number of things that I had done that day that led me to lying on the floor. And probably one of the biggest lessons that I've learned has just been around how we feel is affected by our biology, and our moods and our emotions we can have more impact and influence over than we perhaps realize. And I was making various choices that day around what it was that I was focusing on, around how I was moving my body. It was tight. I couldn't breathe. Obviously, you don't feel like that's a choice at that time. And ultimately what it all meant, that I wasn't coping, that I was struggling, that I couldn't keep up. And beneath all of that had been some habits that had led to an underlying mood over a long period of time. And often we don't realize that mood can change gradually and over time, and it can kind of creep up. And often we're aware with our emotions, I think, because often it's something from the external environment that normally triggers an emotion, and it's quite an acute feeling. But with our moods, it can be much more kind of just happening in the background. And often the first time that we know that we're in a funk is somebody else telling us, or for me with young children, it can just be actually my reaction to them, something that one day they might say or do, and I might laugh at or be like quite jovial about, and the next day they do, and I've flown off the handle at them. And that, you know, so often it can be that means that we recognize that we're in a poor mood. And from a mood perspective, it's driven by our biology and by simple things that we all know as leaders. But I see so many people, and myself in the past, I include in this, either ignoring or disrespecting these things. And it's like, actually, have you eaten today? I see so many leaders that will not, and if you have you eaten something that is you know, that's not going to clog you, it's going to serve you, you know, it's nutritious. I'm also a certified health coach, by the way. That was also a part of this journey. We're probably trying to go into that, but you know, so how are you eating? How are you sleeping? Did you get daylight today? Did you move today? And I don't necessarily mean like hammering it out at the gym, because again, I work with a lot of high achievers, and for some of them, actually, the exercise isn't the right thing, because it's about how we restore ourselves and bring us back to that equilibrium where we can operate at our best. So, you know, like, so all of these things I've been disrespecting. Spending time with people who we care about and who care about us. You know, we are social creatures as human beings, and that's really important. And these things all feed into our moods.
When you have, just to think about terms here, number one, I firmly believe that we are moist, programmable robot to a great extent.
Yes.
And we can influence ourselves by what we eat, what we do, vastly more than we're aware of. Mm-hmm. And what we eat and what we do, if we're not aware of it, influences us without us knowing.
Absolutely.
So you have emotions, which are the intense, fairly short-lived responses to things. So somebody says, "I was a bit shit," and you feel angry about it.
Yes.
But you have a mood, which is, as you talk about, something that lasts. It's more general. It lasts a lot longer. It's accretive. There's not necessarily a single trigger for it. I think there's usually sort of a series of cumulative emotions that lead to a pervasive mood. Your emotions, typically you can say, that's why I'm happy or sad. I got ice cream. I'm happy. I get smacked in the face with a wet fish. I'm a bit pissed off. Right? Yeah, and I think the moods, you say that you've got no particular event, but you've got all the biological, all the environmental, even the weather.
Yes.
Affects your mood.
Yes.
Right? And it's diffuse, pervasive. And I think that's the challenge, is understanding all the different aspects of what it's doing to you. And to some extent, respecting it, giving it the space, and protecting yourself and others from yourself. I don't mean like I should be locked up or sectioned, but I mean, I try not to make big decisions, unless I've thought them through when I'm awake, when I'm sleepy, when I'm happy, and when I'm sad. And if I come to the same conclusion from those angles, then it's a reasonable decision. Because if your response in the moment is, don't do that, right? Or, I'm just, as you said, sludged because I've eaten. You know, if I want to go to bed, if I want to go to sleep, I can eat 3 slices of white bread and I'm done.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, you know, the reason why I think this is so important is because a few weeks ago, I started to feel something similar coming on again as to what I'd experienced all that time ago. What was different this time? So I was walking back from school. I dropped my little ones off there and I was with my mother-in-law, and I noticed that I was struggling to breathe and feeling quite anxious. And I was like, oh my goodness. And of course, your head starts playing tricks and all the thoughts start coming in. You know, gosh, am I going to go through this again? What's going on? And because I had this greater awareness of how my mood can lead to these things, I was like, well, hang on a minute. Let's just look at what's been going on for you for the last week or so. And when I look back, I was like, I've not had enough sleep. I've had maybe, averaging between 5 and 6 hours sleep a night. And so that evening, instead of going to the gym when I normally would do, I went for an evening walk, which was really restorative, much more restorative than, like sweating it out at the gym. I did a little bit of journaling. I came home. I had a bath, which helped me then get a really, really good night's sleep. The next morning, I woke up and I was like a shiny, bright new person. And it's, we can so easily, I think, run into these walls of burnout, of stress, of anxiety. But if we can just be aware as we're, you know, like if we start to, I think there's a really healthy level of stress where we all operate, eustress, where we all operate, you know, at our best, because we've got that little bit of tension, that little bit of pressure that, you know, enables us to perform really, really well. But as soon as you feel that kind of coming off that edge and it's starting to tip into some of that burnout or that overwhelm or the stress side of things, the unhealthy stress, then you've got to look. And I would just encourage people to look not just at the mindset, because I am big on mindset, but not, this was my problem. I'd always looked at the mindset side of things, but to also remember their biology as well, and to think about those real basic things that we all know about. And like we've said, sleep, daylight, movement, nutrition, people you care about, all of those things. And just to assess that and go, what do I need to restore? Because from that restored place, you'll often find that you know, that actually your bandwidth then for dealing with the stress and the strains of life, you expand that bandwidth. You're able to deal with more. But we've got to pay attention. We've got to be aware of where we're at, pay attention to it, and then make sure we're restoring on a regular basis, on a daily basis. And if we're not doing that, yeah, you've got to perfect example. Phone is the perfect. So if you can't see us,
I'm an idiot. I just did this visually, and I'm in a pod. Sorry. I'm sorry if you're listening to this. What I just did is I held up my phone.
Explain.
I held up my phone as Rachel was talking, so I didn't want to interrupt her. I thought it would be really, really clever, and I plugged it in. Look, this is me plugging in my phone, and it's the idea that we should treat ourselves with the same respect as we treat these devilish devices that distract us all the time.
We would never let that thing run out of battery, would we?
Never.
But we do it to ourselves.
All the time.
Love it.
Bananas, eh? If you had 10,000 billboards and an unlimited advertising budget with your marketing background, what would you write on them?
Oh my goodness. What a great question.
You know, I'll talk for 3 seconds while you actually get a chance to think about it. You get the opportunity to put, you know, like a good slide is 6 words visible at 6 feet and 6 lines maximum or whatever, as many words as you like. I'm going to put these billboards all around the world, and we're going to share your message with everyone, the vital thing that they all need to know.
Well, I suppose you talk about the 6 words, and I do actually have 6 words. They are remembering potential, realizing dreams, and restoring balance. And the reason that it's remembering on all of those things is because it's a constant and never-ending process. And I think as human beings, we underestimate what we are capable of. I think, and I believe that we can create the life of our dreams, and we can make our dreams come true. And that I believe that there is a role for us all to be restoring our balance, whether that's internally on an individual level within us, or actually on a global scale in terms of what we're doing, you know, kind of within the planet. And so, yeah, they would be my 6 words.
Remembering potential.
Realizing dreams
and restoring balance.
It's
lovely. Is there perhaps that you recommend or that you give more than any other? I saw your book list. It's fantastic. I like it. But was there one book that you give away more than any other?
It's a tough one. That's a tough one. So I love to read, and I will typically read a book every week or every 2 weeks. I'm an avid nonfiction reader, so I'm passionate about this area, as you know, and so I read lots and lots and lots of different books. I think a great one for people getting started in this area would be Atomic Habits by James Clear, because, you know, that the habits that we have, we've been talking about habits today, haven't we? We've been talking about our habits around our self-care and recognition of where we're at with our moods and so on. So I think that would be a great one to start with. But there's so many. And you're right, Paul, I do have a list of books that have changed my life. So if anybody would like to check that out, then they are more than welcome to do that.
Well, I'm going to put a whole ton of links into the description down here, places where you can find Rach and all her magnificence and great thinking. But Then just lastly, before we wrap up, a couple of things. Number one is, what are you working on right now? What is it you're all about?
So I'm working on numerous projects with different senior leadership teams, helping them to get clarity, reduce stress, and be the best versions of themselves moment to moment. Outside of business, I've got some exciting things happening. So I do a voluntary role. Currently, I'm the vice president for the Professional Speaking Association in the East Midlands. And as of January, I will be stepping up as president. So that's exciting. And I'm looking forward to that.
Magnificent, magnificent. And then the last thing, where can people find you easily?
Oh, LinkedIn is probably going to be the very best place, but I am on all of the major social media channels, and you can find me at Rachel Edmondson-Clarke, and it's Rachel AEL, and it's Edmondson EDMONDSON-Clarke with an E. And if you're in doubt, just add as many letters as you can to my name, and then you'll find me. But I think, as Paul, you said, I mean, and I would, if anything I've said has resonated, I'd love to connect. And if it's a book recommendation you're looking for, do just drop me a note. Let me know what you're working on, and I'd be happy to point people in the right direction.
Absolutely magnificent. With all the letters possible to add to a name, Rachel Edmondson-Clarke, thank you very much for joining.
Oh, it's been a delight. Thank you.
And that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you for joining me. If there's ever anything I can do to help you on your journey, then do please reach out. You can find me on LinkedIn and all the usual sources. Do please subscribe, leave me your 5-star review, and most importantly, get in touch with your comments and feedback. It's really how I grow, and that's what I'm doing this for. Thanks again.